Welcome to our deep dive into Iran's global proxy strategy. You've provided a really interesting mix of sources here, excerpts from a book called Shadow Soldiers, Iran's Global Proxy Strategy, UN reports, think tank analyses, and even some defense intelligence reviews.
Oh, wow.
Our mission today is to untangle this web, understand how it works, and grasp its implications for global security.
Yeah.
Buckle up, because this is a journey that spans continents from the bustling streets of Beirut to the remote mountains of Yemen, and even touches on the financial heart of the Americas.
Sounds exciting.
So how did Iran's use of proxies come about? When did this all begin?
Well, it's a strategy that's deeply rooted in the aftermath of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Following the revolution, there was this burning desire, I guess you could say, within the new regime to export their ideology, counter Western influence, and ultimately reshape the geopolitical landscape in their favor.
It's fascinating that the author of Shadow Soldiers, Albert Hadi, has over 25 years of experience countering terrorism. It's not just an academic theory to him, it's something he's seen firsthand.
Absolutely. And his insights really shed light on the motivations driving the strategy. We can break them down into three main categories: ideological, strategic, and geopolitical.
Okay, let's unpack those, starting with the ideological motivation.
Okay. At its core, the Iranian regime is driven by the desire to spread its unique interpretation of Shia Islam and the concept of guardianship of the Islamic jurist, which essentially legitimizes the rule of the clergy over political affairs. They see the export of this ideology as a religious duty and a way to create a network of like-minded allies across the region.
So it's not just about power, it's about reshaping the very fabric of society in these countries.
Exactly. Now, when it comes to strategic motivations, it's primarily about deterring adversaries like the U.S. and Israel. By supporting proxy groups, Iran can inflict damage, raise the cost of intervention and project power without risking a direct confrontation with superior military forces.
It's a classic case of asymmetric warfare,
Huh.
using unconventional tactics to level the playing field.
Precisely. And finally, we have the geopolitical motivations, which are all about expanding Iran's influence and becoming the dominant power in the Middle East. They want to control strategic waterways, energy resources, and political decision-making in the region.
So how effective has this strategy been in achieving these goals?
Well, it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, Iran has undoubtedly been able to project power and influence far beyond its borders, often at a relatively low cost compared to conventional warfare. They've been able to destabilize rivals, disrupt energy markets, and create a perception of strength.
But there have also been significant costs, right?
Absolutely. Iran has faced crippling international sanctions, been condemned by the UN for supporting terrorism, and become increasingly isolated on the global stage. The constant threat of escalation with its adversaries also looms large.
It seems like a high-stakes gamble with no guaranteed outcome.
It is, and it's important to understand the key player in all of this: the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC.
The IRGC is much more than just a military force, isn't it?
Yes. The IRGC is deeply embedded in Iranian society, controlling vast sectors of the economy and operating almost as a state within a state. This gives them immense power and influence, which they use to build and manage their network of proxies.
So how do they actually go about building and managing this complex network? What's the process?
Well, the IRGC, specifically its elite Quds force, is responsible for the training, funding, arming, and strategic direction of these groups. Think of them as the architects and the project managers of this vast and sprawling network.
That raises an interesting question. What motivates individuals to join these proxy groups? It's not like enlisting in a national army.
It's a complex interplay of factors. Some are drawn to the ideological appeal, believing they're fighting for a righteous cause and fulfilling a religious duty. Others may be motivated by economic incentives, especially in struggling economies where opportunities are scarce.
And there's also the psychological element, right? The need for belonging, identity, and purpose, which can be especially appealing to vulnerable individuals.
Exactly. The IRGC has mastered the art of indoctrination, often portraying their actions as divinely sanctioned, creating an almost cult-like loyalty to the supreme leader.
That's a chilling thought. It speaks to the power of ideology and how it can be manipulated to justify acts of violence. Now, on a more practical level, how does Iran manage to fund this entire network especially with the sanctions in place?
It's a sophisticated operation involving a blend of direct funding, enabling illicit activities like drug trafficking and smuggling, and even exploiting international aid channels. They've become experts at navigating the complexities of the global financial system and finding creative ways to move money around.
Exploiting aid channels, that sounds incredibly audacious.
It is. We'll dive into a shocking case study later involving an American charity that was shut down for funneling money to Hamas. It highlights the vulnerabilities of aid systems and how they can be exploited for nefarious purposes.
Okay, I'm already sensing the layers of complexity here. So money is one thing, but how about the weapons themselves? Iran is under an arms embargo, so how are they smuggling weapons to their proxies on such a large scale?
It's a global operation that spans continents using land, sea, and air routes. They employ sophisticated techniques like documentation fraud, concealment, and even utilizing civilian aircraft to transport weapons. They've had decades to refine their methods and adapt to changing circumstances.
So it's more intricate and far-reaching than we might imagine. It's a global network with a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely. And it's this complexity that makes it so challenging to effectively counter. But to understand the full scope of this network, we need to look at the specific players involved.
Let's dive into some of the key players in this network. We've mentioned Hezbollah, Iraqi Shia militias, and the Houthis. Each group has its own distinct history and role within Iran's overall strategy, right?
That's right. Let's start with Hezbollah, perhaps the most well-known and powerful of Iran's proxies. They emerged in the 1980s during the Lebanese Civil War with significant support from Iran. They're not just a militant group, they're also a major political force in Lebanon with seats in parliament and a considerable social welfare network.
Their 2006 war with Israel really demonstrated their military capabilities. It challenged a lot of assumptions about the strength of non-state actors.
Their arsenal, estimated to include over 150,000 rockets, has essentially turned southern Lebanon into a launch pad capable of striking deep into Israeli territory. This effectively holds major Israeli population centers hostage and demonstrates the leverage Iran can gain through its proxies.
It's a stark reminder of how these groups can disrupt regional stability and pose a direct threat to national security. Now, what about the Iraqi Shia militias? They seem to operate in a much more complex and fluid environment.
Yeah, the Iraqi Shia militias are a more diverse group with shifting alliances and internal rivalries. They gained prominence after the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq, capitalizing on the power vacuum and the sectarian tensions that followed. Iran played a crucial role in arming and training many of these groups.
It's fascinating how they've managed to integrate themselves into the Iraqi government and security apparatus, wielding considerable political and military power.
This integration gives Iran a level of influence within Iraq that's incredibly difficult to counter. It allows them to shape policy, manipulate security forces, and even potentially influence the outcome of elections.
It seems like you're playing a long game in Iraq, slowly but surely expanding their influence. Lastly, we have the Houthis in Yemen. Their rise to power has been one of the most dramatic developments in the region in recent years.
The Houthis, who adhere to a branch of Shia Islam known as Zaitism, have been engaged in a long-running conflict with the Yemeni government. Iran saw an opportunity to exploit this conflict and support the Houthis, who have since seized control of the capital Sana'a and large parts of the country.
Their drone and missile attacks on Saudi oil facilities have made headlines around the world, disrupting global energy markets and demonstrating their reach.
Those attacks were a wake-up call for many, revealing the Houthis' growing military capabilities and their willingness to use them against strategic targets. Iran has been instrumental in providing the technology and expertise to carry out these attacks, further highlighting the danger posed by their proxy network.
So we've seen how powerful and far-reaching this network is, but the question remains, how do we counter it? What strategies can be effective against such a complex and adaptable adversary?
That's the challenge that policymakers are grappling with. There's no silver bullet. It requires a multifaceted approach that combines diplomacy, sanctions, intelligence gathering, and military deterrence.
So it's not just about military force. We need to address the underlying conditions that allow these groups to flourish.
Exactly. That means tackling corruption, promoting economic development, fostering inclusive governance, and addressing legitimate grievances. It's about creating a more stable and equitable environment where people are less susceptible to recruitment by extremist groups.
It's a long-term strategy that requires patience, persistence, and a commitment to working with regional partners. But simply trying to eliminate these groups through military force is unlikely to be successful in the long run.
It's a tempting solution, but it often backfires, creating more instability and resentment, which ultimately benefits groups like the Houthis and Hezbollah.
It's a complex problem with no easy solutions. But understanding the motivations, the tactics, and the interconnections within this network is crucial for developing effective counterstrategies.
And it requires recognizing that this is a long game. Iran has been patiently building this network for decades. Countering it will require a similar level of commitment and strategic thinking.
Speaking of long-term strategy, let's shift our focus to the financial underpinnings of this network. How does Iran manage to fund these groups, especially given the sanctions they've been under for so long?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. They've become incredibly adept at circumventing sanctions and exploiting loopholes in the global financial system. They utilize a mix of direct financing, illicit activities, and creative financial mechanisms to move money around the world undetected.
One of the most surprising revelations from our research was the use of charities and humanitarian organizations as fronts for funneling money to these groups.
It's a tactic that preys on the goodwill of others and the vulnerabilities of aid systems. They've been caught using legitimate charities to move money to Hamas and other designated terrorist groups.
That's a truly shocking case study. The Holy Land Foundation, a U.S.-based charity, was actually shut down for funneling millions of dollars to Hamas. It highlights the need for greater vigilance and scrutiny of financial flows, especially when it comes to humanitarian aid.
Absolutely. These groups are constantly adapting their methods and finding new ways to exploit the system. It's a constant game of cat and mouse with intelligence agencies and financial institutions trying to stay one step ahead.
So they're not just relying on state funding. They're creating these intricate financial networks that are deeply intertwined with legitimate businesses and organizations.
Exactly. It makes it much harder to track and disrupt their funding streams. And it speaks to the sophistication of their operations and their ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
So it's not just about cutting off a few bank accounts or sanctioning a few individuals. It's about dismantling these complex and often opaque financial networks.
And that requires a global effort. It needs cooperation between governments, intelligence agencies, and financial institutions to share information and coordinate their efforts.
It's a daunting task, but it's essential if we want to effectively counter this threat.
Absolutely. And we haven't even touched on the issue of weapons smuggling, which is another crucial element of this strategy.
That's right. Iran is under an arms embargo, yet they manage to supply their proxies with a vast array of weapons, from small arms to sophisticated missiles.
Yeah.
How do they do it?
Well, that's a story for the next part of our deep dive. We'll delve into the intricate world of arms trafficking, tracing the routes, the methods, and the challenges of trying to stem the flow of weapons to these groups.
We've explored the motivations behind Iran's proxy strategy, delved into the complex world of financing, and met some of the key players in this network. Now let's shift our focus to the final piece of the puzzle: arms smuggling. Iran is under an international arms embargo, yet their proxies seem to have no shortage of weapons. How do they manage to pull this off?
Well, it's a testament to their resourcefulness and their ability to exploit weaknesses in the global system. They utilize a multi-layered approach, combining land, sea, and air routes, often piggybacking on legitimate trade flows to mask their activities.
So it's not just about sneaking crates of weapons across a border in the dead of night.
Not at all. We're talking about sophisticated operations involving container ships, commercial flights, even private yachts. They forge documents, create shell companies, and use intricate concealment techniques to move weapons across continents undetected.
It sounds like something straight out of a spy movie.
Mm-hmm.
How extensive are these smuggling networks, and what impact do they have on efforts to contain groups like Hamas and Hezbollah?
These networks are vast and constantly evolving. They stretch from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, reaching into Africa and even South America. This constant flow of weapons allows Iran's proxies to maintain their fighting capabilities, replenish their arsenals, and even upgrade their weaponry with more advanced systems.
We've seen evidence of Iranian-supplied weapons in conflicts from Syria to Yemen. It raises the question, what kind of weapons are we talking about? Is it just small arms and ammunition, or are they moving heavier, more sophisticated weaponry?
It's a wide range encompassing everything from AK-47s and rocket-propelled grenades to anti-tank missiles, sophisticated drones, and even components for ballistic missiles. The type and quantity of weapons supplied often depend on the specific needs of the proxy group and the strategic objectives of Iran.
The fact that they're able to move such advanced weaponry raises serious concerns about the potential for escalation and the spread of these weapons to other groups, including terrorist organizations.
It's a valid concern. There's always a risk that these weapons could fall into the wrong hands or be used for purposes beyond what Iran intended. That's why it's so crucial to disrupt these smuggling networks and prevent the proliferation of these weapons.
It's a daunting task, given the complexity of these operations and the lengths Iran is willing to go to evade detection. What are some of the challenges involved in countering arms smuggling?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the sheer volume of global trade. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Inspecting every container, every shipment, is simply not feasible. It requires sophisticated intelligence gathering, international cooperation, and targeted interdiction efforts to be effective.
It also seems like they're constantly adapting their methods and finding new ways to evade detection.
Exactly. They're always one step ahead, exploiting loopholes in the system, forging documents, and using creative concealment techniques to stay ahead of the authorities. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game.
So far, we've examined the nuts and bolts of Iran's proxy strategy, the financing, the arms smuggling, the organizational structure. But let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. What's the strategic endgame here for Iran? What are they ultimately trying to achieve?
At its core, Iran's proxy strategy is about leveraging limited resources to achieve outsized influence and project power beyond their borders. It's a form of asymmetric warfare that allows them to challenge their adversaries, primarily the United States and Israel, without risking a direct military confrontation that they would likely lose.
So it's a way for them to punch above their weight, so to speak.
Precisely. They're playing a long game, using their proxies to destabilize the region, undermine their rivals' interests, and advance their own ideological and geopolitical agenda.
It's a strategy that seems to be working, at least in the short term. They've been able to establish a foothold in several countries, disrupt energy markets, and inflict damage on their adversaries.
But it's a dangerous game with high stakes. Their actions have provoked international condemnation, triggered sanctions, and fueled instability in an already volatile region.
It's also important to acknowledge the human cost of this strategy. We're talking about conflicts that have devastated entire countries, displaced millions of people, and resulted in countless deaths.
The human toll is immense and often overlooked. It's easy to get caught up in the geopolitical chess game, but we must never forget the real-life consequences for ordinary people caught in the crossfire.
It raises the question, is this strategy sustainable in the long run? Can Iran continue to support this network of proxies without facing even greater blowback?
That's a difficult question to answer. It depends on a multitude of factors, including the internal stability of Iran, the response of the international community, and the resilience of their adversaries.
It also depends on the choices made by the proxy groups themselves. We've seen cases where these groups have acted independently, even contrary to Iran's wishes.
That's an important point. These are not mindless puppets. They have their own agendas, their own internal dynamics, and their own calculations of risk and reward. Iran doesn't have absolute control over their actions.
So there's always the potential for unforeseen consequences, for these conflicts to escalate or spill over into neighboring countries.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this strategy so dangerous. It's inherently unpredictable and prone to unintended consequences.
This deep dive has been a journey into a shadowy world of proxies, secret funding networks, and clandestine arms shipments. It's revealed a complex and unsettling reality that challenges conventional notions of warfare and international relations.
And it underscores the need for a nuanced and sophisticated understanding of this phenomenon. Simplistic solutions are unlikely to be effective.
What stands out to you from all of this? What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
For me, it's the realization that Iran's proxy strategy is not simply a military tactic. It's a multidimensional approach that blends ideology, geopolitics, economics, and even religion. It's deeply intertwined with Iran's revolutionary identity and their vision of themselves as a regional power, challenging the existing world order.
But it's a strategy that's constantly adapting, evolving, and finding new ways to exploit weaknesses in the system.
Exactly. That's why it's so crucial to stay informed, to understand the motivations, the methods, and the potential consequences of this strategy. It's a challenge that's not going away anytime soon.
This deep dive has provided a glimpse into the complexities of Iran's proxy network, but it's just the beginning. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, to delve deeper into the research, and to form your own conclusions. The world of Iranian proxies is constantly shifting, and understanding its nuances is crucial for navigating the complexities of the Middle East and beyond.